Is there any red area you don't want me to walk in?
No, it's fine.
So even this simple statement that you made.
This is about as close as we'll get to Narendra Modi on his trip to Melbourne. He famously avoids unscripted news conferences, preferring instead more staged managed appearances.
Considered very aggressive, is considered something that provocative. Similar thing happened in Norway.
I saw that blowing up on X. Yeah.
So I'm getting quite a feel for that.
Great.
नमस्ते दोस्तों, प्लीज सिट डाउन में आपका स्वागत है। पहले नॉर्वे, फिर ऑस्ट्रेलिया, अब हाल में न्यूजीलैंड। बार बार यह सवाल उठाया गया कि प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी इंडिपेंडेंट किस्म की प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंसेस क्यों नहीं करते हैं, क्यों पत्रकारों से सीधी बात नहीं करते हैं। पिछले दिनों जब ऑस्ट्रेलिया में यह घटना हुई तो न्यूज 7 के पत्रकार जॉनसन ब्लेक ने बाकायदा यह टिप्पणी की अपनी P2C में कि नरेंद्र मोदी बहुत ही स्क्रिप्टेड और बहुत मैनेज्ड इवेंट में रहते हैं, पत्रकारों को बहुत दूर किया जाता है। हमें थोड़ा सा परस्यू करना पड़ा और अब जॉनसन ब्लेक हमारे बीच हैं। हमने उनसे बातचीत की, हमने उनसे जानना चाहा कि वे दरअसल जब ये टिप्पणी कर रहे थे तो उनका मंसूबा क्या था, वे क्यों ऐसा कर रहे थे, मकसद क्या था। इसके अलावा भी हमने ये जानने की कोशिश की कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया में पत्रकार अब सत्ता के साथ अपने संबंधों को कैसे देखते हैं। देखिएगा और बताइएगा कि कैसे ऑस्ट्रेलिया का जो जर्नलिज्म का स्केप है वह अलग है भारत की पत्रकारिता के संदर्भों से। बातचीत स्वाभाविक है कि अंग्रेजी में हुई है, तो बातचीत को ध्यान से देखिए और अपनी टिप्पणी जरूर कीजिएगा।
Thank you, Blake, for taking this time. Let me tell you, I teach at the University of Delhi, and I interact with millions of young children, youth. And I thought that we'll take this opportunity to figure out how journalism is different in Australia. So, just tell me, a single sentence, one sentence report that made a major talking point in India. Did you anticipate it?
Not at all. No. It was, as you say, a 10-second piece to camera, more of an observation than a criticism. It just surprised me that for a 2-day visit, that there would be no chance to ask any questions. And so I had no idea that it was going to blow up like that. But I'm kind of glad it did, because it's important to talk about these things.
Let's figure it out more. This sentence, was your opinion personal, or it's simply a description how Australian media view Indian, broadly this whole problem?
I don't think it was opinion. I think it's fairly fact, like it's true. Mr. Modi doesn't necessarily do a lot of press conferences. And I know there's the history of what happened in Norway. Since he's departed Australia, the same question has been brought up in New Zealand. So I don't think it was that controversial to say that this is as close as we're going to get to him. As it turns out, we were 100% right. I don't think that's an opinion. I think it was just fact that for 2 days, we didn't get a chance to get any questions to him.
Blake, thankfully you mentioned this New Zealand thing. In New Zealand press conference, when this foreign services officers were asked directly why Mr. Modi is not taking questions,
They said
a very demeaning reply was given in the terms that it said, since Modi's constituency is uneducated rural folks, and that's why he do not consider talking to the press as important. How do you react to that?
That's not a great way to frame either your electors,
yes,
the general public in India. That's
Yeah.
demeaning. But that doesn't mean that just because they're uneducated that you don't have to answer to them.
And
Right.
they're not uneducated, by the way. I mean, there's living in the countryside, that's the only thing. I mean,
That's not a bad thing.
That's
Yeah.
not a bad thing.
People in the country, farmers and small towns make up a huge backbone, I'm sure, of Australia. And I'm particularly sure in India as well, given the population. Not everyone can be living in the cities. So, look, I think that was the other thing that I think that gentleman said was there's a sense of deja vu here, in that people are asking the questions. Well, I mean, if you guys are recognising it and you're calling it deja vu, what are you doing about it?
Okay, let me put it directly. If, for example, if the Australian Prime Minister did the same thing, if Anthony Albanese or say Peter Dutton or anybody else behaved in the same way, how would Australian media and how will Australian people will react?
With scorn, I think. And you'd quickly find that in any opportunity in the open air, journalists would be walking up to his car, we're getting him on his morning walk. Why aren't you answering questions about this? What do you have to say about this? The wonderful thing about Australia and the freedom of press is we can get close to our leaders. You know, they have security detail and whatnot, and let's not suggest we're invading their privacy or their personal space. But I think as a public leader, you forgo a certain element of privacy when you're in the public sphere that you owe people who you work for, being a public servant, questions to answers to some of the questions that they have. So if that happened in Australia, I think you would find people, journalists, waiting for their next public appearance, throwing questions at stage managed events, or getting them when they're walking off stage or walking to their car. Those sort of moments would become a chance to question a political leader because they're not off limits here.
As a journalist, how do you see how important is this access to public servants, including leaders, in democracy?
I think it's one of the most important elements of democracy, that transparency, the accountability, explaining your decisions. You've got to bring the public along with you, right? Like you have to not just tell them what you're doing, but sell it to them. And I think that's a really important part of questioning, because sometimes people might have a different understanding to the one that you're putting out there, which is what Modi does. He just has a one-way conversation with the country via social media and his own forms of communication. But there's no chance to have a conversation with him and suggest other ideas that maybe he and his team haven't thought of. And I think that's a really important part of democracy, that accountability, that openness, and that willingness to share ideas, to contest ideas, and maybe find some sort of middle ground. I think it's far more engaging in a political landscape when you have a back and forth interaction, even if you don't like some of the questions being asked. I think it's still important.
I want you to wear this journalist hat and tell me, the other day when Modi was in this Marvel Stadium, there were two different scenes. There were two different areas. One is when the diaspora was inside the stadium cheering Modi and all. That was a huge event, as you said, staged event maybe. But there were people.
Sure.
And there was a couple of people, there were a handful of people outside the stadium protesting against the immigrants and India in general. There were certain slogans made. Which one of these are representative, in your opinion, of the Australian opinion about India? And which one you believe? Do you believe both are important, or do you believe that no, this one is more representative of Australian opinion about India?
I think the people you saw carrying Australian flags and shouting, pardon my language, Modi, India, that is not representative of the wider view of Australia. That's a very niche, far-right, borderline racist approach. And I don't think that you go out to the suburbs in Australia, that's not what people are thinking. There are people who have concerns about the number of migrants coming to the country and putting pressure on infrastructure and housing and whatnot. I think that's a separate argument. This was very clearly a very niche, unenviable position for those people to be. What I loved was the fact that the drums and the noise and the cacophony of sound from Australian Indians that were there was magnificent. They didn't have to swear. They didn't have to be rude to back. They just made musical noise and celebration, and it drowned them out. And that was great.
That was very un-Australian, isn't it?
The drums and whatnot. Well, it's Australia's very diverse. How do you define exactly what is Australia? It's not, if you're saying Australia as a white Australia, sure, but Australia is not a white Australia. It's a combination of everything, whether it's the Indian drums, whether it's another culture's musical instruments. But it was fantastic to see in that moment the positive energy outweigh the negative.
Okay, Blake, like most of us, we were not given, for decades now, we are not given any opportunity to ask any question to Modi, and you were rightly disappointed with it. But given a chance, if you were in front of Mr. Modi and you had your chance to ask a question, what it would be?
I'd ask a couple. I'd ask, firstly, why do you never take questions?
But then it becomes,
why are you giving us the opportunity?
It becomes infectious the moment you ask questions.
Yeah. I would love to ask where the crash investigation is at for the Air India disaster last year. There's a big case that's been ongoing for many years here. A man by the name of Puneet, Indian national, killed a guy while drunk and speeding in his car, then fled to India in 2009, hasn't been extradited, but the cops here are trying to get a hold of him and extradite him. So there's there's an international story. There's a local one there that would be perfect to ask the leader of a country that both have international ramifications. I'm sure there's lots of other stories, but at a high level for a PM, those are the two I'd go for.
Oh, great. This is interesting that when you were framing these questions, you had your audience in your mind, right? I could very clearly see that you were obviously concerned about your audience, and you were raising questions which you believe your audience gonna like about. What is your understanding of Indian media? Because unfortunately nowadays when we talk about, say, access being granted to the leaders, especially leaders like Modi, either no journalist is granted any access, or a very hand-picked people who are loyal to the power.
Interesting. Okay.
They're the only ones who get some kind of access to the corridors of power. So from that perspective, and when they get any opportunity, they end up asking silly questions. For example, one which is considered, we teach in the media classes, is that when a journalist was given, not really journalist, but somebody posing as journalist was given access to Mr. Modi, he asked question, how do you eat mango? You get it cut, or you actually have it raw? That was the question.
That's your one opportunity to get the leader.
You get only opportunity you're getting, and you're wasting it like that. So, do you believe? Let me phrase it like this: what, in your opinion, is the task of a journalist who somehow get access to the power, and how committed the person has to be with the audience?
Well, without an audience, what are we as journalists? Who are we? Who do we represent? Who are we working for? I'm always wary of people that get access to the corridors of power because they're seen as an ally in the media. I don't think by questioning a leader you have to be rude. There's ways to ask hard questions without being an idiot about it, without being too abrasive. And that's a skill of the job. So, look, I would love to know how Narendra Modi eats a mango. It's probably a funny question you might ask at the end of an interview, or even, to butter him up at the start if you must, if that's the environment. But I think you need to be seen to be asking those questions. And even if they walk off or say no comment, that's part of the story, right? That becomes the answer. And that tells you so much about that person when they say no comment, or as the New Zealand... was he the commissioner?
Yeah, he was Indian Foreign Service officer.
Yeah, so this is deja vu or whatnot. So look, there's ways around it. I've been in positions before where you get access to a particular leader or person. You got 3 questions, and it becomes 4 pretty easily if you're just smart about it. But you've got to be ready to get your answer on microphone, on camera, and be prepared to catch that moment where they either walk off or give you a no comment, or perhaps even something that's so outlandish that becomes a story in itself.
Okay, the last one from me. Considering this area that you said, okay, these bunch of people who were saying all these things about India or go back and things like that, they represent only a very small proportion.
I hope so, yeah.
But there are supposedly valid concern of many others about the migrants.
Yes.
Can you just give us their view? I mean, why do you believe that some of their concerns might be valid about migration and mass migration coming?
Sure.
Is it just about stress on the infrastructure thing, or you believe that it is also about what Australia constitutes? Because I've been to this Museum of Migration earlier day. It believes that so far Australia takes pride in being a nation built by migrants.
Yes.
But recently we see this tendency of migrants, non-white migrants to be precise. The mass migration changing the character of the society to some extent. Yeah. Sometimes having even the racial undertones, but let's keep the...
Yeah, I think there's always going to be the racial undertones. Yeah.
But what are the valid concerns of these people who...
I think there's definitely, infrastructure, housing concerns. You look at house prices in Australia, they are so out they are so unaffordable. They're out of the league for so many first home buyers, and that's unfortunate. Whether that's through mass migration or lack of investment in infrastructure and housing, it's probably a combination of the two. There are certain elements of society that do believe that the Australian way of life is being watered down and being compromised by huge waves of people coming in. Now, I think it depends on where you're looking, and I think every city has its issues. Do I think we're in danger of being swamped? No, like that's so far away. Do I think though that we have a battle on our hands when you are bringing in people from different cultures and trying to get them to assimilate to the Australian way of life? Yes, it's so difficult to get so many people reading from the same hymn book, as it were. But it takes time, and I think the education system has a big part to play in that. Look, is it a major problem that people aren't assimilating? I think in some areas, absolutely. In a wider sense, I don't know. I don't have that answer for you. But when you import lots of people from different cultures, of course, there's going to be a bit of a blip there in terms of them wanting to assimilate or not assimilate. So look, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is to that. I get there are definitely racist undertones in some of the arguments there. I don't subscribe to those. I'm not a fan of that. But I do think it puts strain on resources to get people to assimilate to what we subscribe to. What makes Australia so great? Let's keep that.
Great. I think this is a very apt moment to close this conversation. And just a parting, not really a question, but a comment. There are things which about Indians which many Australians might not like, but what are two things which you like most about Indians or India in general?
Well, the food for one. I mean, that's always a win. There's a real determination amongst Indian Australians that I've met, or people like yourselves who are just visiting. For example, you chasing me down in this interview. And I don't mean that badly. I'm here on my own terms voluntarily. There's a determination to succeed, and for the most part, it seems like it's done in quite a polite way. Whether that's through business deals or on the cricket sporting field. The country is now, one of the big players in the world. I mean, it's certainly the biggest from a population sense. And I think from an Australian political sense, India presents a very powerful ally with what's happening in the US, what's happening in China. Your economy is growing really well. So I think, Australians and Indians are probably going to come together even more so politically and culturally over the next few years. I think it's a good thing.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you for all the time you gave.
My pleasure.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thanks.